This is Health Call Online, the place for extended versions of interviews you hear on our weekly radio broadcast, the Health Call Radio Hour, now heard on more stations through national syndication. I'm Lee Kelso. You just can't avoid it. Sooner or later, as we age, our bodies are going to change, and that means we need to change the way we eat. Dr. Nick Fuller covered this extremely well in a recent episode of his podcast, 9 Minutes to Better Health. The episode was called Aging in Food, How Should You Age Gracefully? Well, I invited Dr. Nick to join us from the University of Sydney in Australia to give a little more time to explain this really important concept. So, Doctor, thanks for being here. What changes in our body that causes us to change the way we eat?
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic and something that I think a large percentage of the population fail to appreciate. But as we age and during the best part of our life, over the age of 60, 65, our body stops making a lot of enzymes and hormones that are required to digest a lot of the nutrients from food. So there are some important considerations and changes you should be making to your diet as you age. But remember, during a vital part of your life, still a third of your life, where you can make essential changes to prevent disease, manage your weight, and improve your quality of life.
That's very important. I think you're right. I don't think people understand that our stomachs and all of the organs involved in digestion just aren't quite what they used to be as we get older. So it's important to consider that. There are also some changes in body composition we need to pay attention to. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is a fascinating, change that's happening within the body. Now, it's a scientific term that we call sarcopenia. And as we age, and as early as, or the onset starts to happen as early as 40 years, we start to see a decrease in muscle mass. Now, that is known as sarcopenia. As our muscle mass starts to go down, our metabolic rate or our basal metabolic rate starts to decline. It makes it harder to manage our weight, but it also makes it harder to maintain a good quality of life because you're more likely to be subject to falls. Your independence can decrease. There's a lot of research around this topic suggesting that if you can do all you can to hold on to your muscle mass, improve your body composition as you age, you're more likely to lead an independent, healthy, long life. So again, coming back to that question you asked at the start, there's hormonal changes that take place which are, somewhat outside of our control. For example, testosterone and growth hormone decreases with age. And again, it starts to happen as early as 40, but it's definitely more evident over the age of 65. And we also see a decrease in estrogen levels in women, making it very hard to hold on to our muscle mass. But there's factors that you can control, like diet and exercise, where you can improve your muscle to fat ratio and importantly, improve body composition, because that is really the determining factor of how efficiently your body is revving along. When it comes to diet, simple change we need to focus on is protein. And when it comes to exercise, it's resistance training. Now, with protein, our needs and our requirements with age actually go up. Our body is less efficient at using the protein that we get from food to make muscle or to maintain our muscle mass stores. So we should be having about 80 grams of protein a day for men and about 60 grams for women. And when it comes to exercise and resistance training, I'm not talking about going to the gym. You don't have to be lifting the heavy iron, but you need to be doing some sort of body weight circuit or resistance training circuit a couple of times a week in the comfort of your own home. These simple things where you're focusing on diet and activity will improve your body composition and, importantly, prevent a lot of the disease that does come as we age.
So let me go back on a couple of points you raised there. Does it matter what type of protein I'm eating? Does it matter whether it's animal or vegetable proteins?
This is a good point. You can meet your protein requirements through non-animal sources, but it's very hard because the biological value is something that we measure within a food. And that is how efficient we are, or how good we can absorb the protein from that particular food. So animal sources, we can get the protein out, get it into the muscles, and use it much more efficiently than non-animal source, like a legume or a lentil. So look, when it comes to protein, if you can, you should be focusing on including animal product sources like eggs, dairy, some lean meats, and with most of the meals each day, because you're going to get the protein from the food much more efficiently than if you're just focusing on plant-based sources that are high in protein. Your body just can't get that protein out as efficiently.
Yeah, I just saw a study not long ago that said the benefits, the digestibility of eggs and the protein and the vitamins that they give us far outweigh any offset of additional cholesterol. So people need to just kind of set that one aside, right?
They do. It's something that we're still caught up on, and you still see it with healthcare professionals, that fear of eggs because of the fact that it supposedly increases our blood cholesterol, but that's not the case. Well-controlled, randomized controlled trials have shown that when you eat more eggs or when you eat more foods containing cholesterol, your body simply makes less of it. Your body naturally produces cholesterol, but when you eat those foods, it just means I no longer need to produce as much of it to produce or conduct those vital day-to-day functions. So eggs are a great protein source. They contain all of the amino acids, and therefore they can be a great snack or a food that you include each day.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. That study made a lot of sense to me. What about other things that our body shifts and goes through? Milk and dairy is an important source not only of protein, but also calcium. Walk me through that.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I guess, key considerations as we age. We talked about body composition just then, but two other important nutrient concerns, as you just highlighted, are calcium and vitamin D. Now, calcium, again, comes from all different foods, but how efficiently we absorb the calcium from that food does vary depending on whether it's an animal source or a non-animal source. So the richest source of calcium is dairy. Now, just like those hormonal changes that take place with body composition, remember the decrease in testosterone, decrease in growth hormone and estrogen, we also have a decrease in enzymes being produced in the body, which makes it harder to digest and get the minerals out from a lot of these foods. Now, one of those enzymes is lactase. We produce less of it in the small intestine, which means that when we have foods like dairy products, which are high in lactose, it can result in side effects, unpleasant side effects like gastrointestinal upset or stomach discomfort.
Right.
So we still need to be focusing on including plenty of these sources of calcium, because as we age, our bones are more subject to disease, becoming brittle, and a disease known as osteoporosis. You need to be getting calcium 3 times a day, 3 serves a day. The best source of calcium is your dairy products. If you're experiencing the gastrointestinal side effects, it's just because your lactase enzyme is decreasing as you age. So what do? You make the switch to lactose-free products. You're still going to get the same nutrients, the same amount of calcium, the same amount of protein, but they're taking out that lactose sugar. That's what you need to do, make that simple change.
Can I also look to the vegetable or the plant-based milks, almond milk, soy milk, cashew milk, that type of thing?
No, unfortunately, these just don't stack up nutritionally. When it comes to the milk alternatives, the only one that stacks up is this calcium-fortified soy milk. Okay, It's going to have the same amount of protein, the same amount of calcium, but again, it's still going to lack a key nutrient, and that nutrient is iodine. You find that in cow's milk. You're not going to find that in any of the plant-based alternatives. So look, if you're making the switch to plant-based alternatives, or you already have, fine, but soy is the only one that stacks up, and then you still have to appreciate that you're going to be lacking iodine. Iodine is important for a healthy metabolism, because that's what determines how quickly your metabolic rate or metabolism is sort of revving along.
Yeah, and as more people have moved to sea salt, they're missing out on the iodine that's put into table salt. So that is a good point. Vitamin D, you mentioned there, is very important because that helps move the calcium into our bones. But in here in we're not in sunny Australia. It's tough for most of the United States to get enough vitamin D during the winter months. You just can't get enough sunshine to make that happen. So supplementation seems to be appropriate for many people. Is there a level that is recommended, a blood level that is recommended?
Yeah, this is a very good point you make. I mean, there's a lot of countries throughout the globe that struggle to get that required amount of sunlight. But just on that point, we only need a very, very small dose. The best source of vitamin D that we can absorb in the body, which is D3, vitamin D3, is actually coming from the sunlight. So even if you can get 5 minutes a day, that's enough for your body to produce sufficient stores. And then when it comes to food, you can actually get it from foods, but you need to be getting fortified foods. So eggs, for example, can have vitamin D added into the food. So there are ways of getting vitamin D from your food. And then in terms of how it's measured, the units vary between countries as well. But you can go to your healthcare professional, your doctor, your GP, and get a simple blood test. They can check your vitamin D levels. If it's low, it may then be suitable to put you onto a vitamin D supplement. But again, if you can get just a smallest amount of sunlight each day, 5 minutes, that will be enough to boost up your vitamin D stores and ensure you're getting the calcium from the food into your bones to prevent the bones breaking down, to prevent the brittle bones, and to prevent the osteoporosis.
It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit, 0 Celsius where I am. So I don't think I'm going to be going out there for 5 minutes today. So maybe I am on a supplementation routine. Maybe that's where I need to be. Something else we need to pay attention to is vitamin B12. Explain why it makes that so important for people like me who are 65 plus.
It's another key nutrient of concern. Now, just like the lactase enzyme that we're producing less of as we age in the small intestine, believe it or not, we're also producing less of another enzyme known as intrinsic factor. Intrinsic factor is required in the stomach to absorb the vitamin B12 that we get from foods. Now, the reason we need vitamin B12 is to form healthy red blood cells, which is required to transport oxygen around the body. So without sufficient vitamin B12, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel lethargic, and you're not going to want to get off the couch. Now, vitamin B12 only comes from animal sources of food. You're not going to get it from plant sources. You will find it fortified in plant sources, but the absorption of that vitamin B12 is not often that great. So again, this is another one that you should be getting checked with your doctor, your vitamin B12 level, because it's likely that you might need a supplement, particularly over the age of 65. You remember, purely because of the fact that your body's producing less of this enzyme required to absorb it. And the most efficient way of taking that supplement is actually by injection. You only need it once every 12 months, but it's an injection that's the most readily absorbed form of taking it.
A vitamin B, a multivitamin containing B12 is not going to get that done? Can I not absorb that through my digestive tract?
It's unlikely you're going to absorb much of it and get enough of the small amount you need that your body requires to perform that function of forming red blood cells. So if you're not eating any animal products, I would suggest going to your doctor and getting it tested, because you might need an intravenous injection. If you're eating animal products, don't worry. Your vitamin B12 level is likely to be fine, even with that decline in intrinsic factor that we produce over the age of 65.
Sure. You know, there's another factor here that has to do with nutrition as we age, and that is people sometimes have problems with their teeth and they don't chew as well, or just the hassle factor of cooking at home might make me inclined to eat less efficiently or choose more prepared foods. Any thoughts on all of those points?
That's another important consideration as we age, social isolation, change in food preferences, taste. these are all coming into play. Okay, food can become less appealing, can be harder to digest or break down a lot of those foods we've been talking about, like the animal products.
Mm-hmm.
So making the switch to softer, more palatable foods, for instance, mince instead of steak, is a simple way of still getting your nutritional requirements, but breaking down that barrier that might be stopping you from eating that food. So really, when it comes down to it, they're going to be factors that do come into play at different stages of your life, but you need to be focusing on protein. So you need to be getting regular sources of lean meat if you can. Remember, calcium is another important consideration, plenty of dairy products. And with the vitamin D, like you said, when sunlight's not appropriate, opt for the fortified foods, and yes, you may need a supplement.
Another consideration is constipation. So if I'm adding more dairy into my diet, a lot of folks are going to have that issue. They're going to face that. I know that dehydration among especially the elderly, when you're 85 plus, that's a very serious concern. But what about all of us on the younger side of that? How do we cope with that constipation frequency?
Yes, something that it's very common, particularly as we, not just as an aging population, but also as our waistlines start to increase. Our diet is not as healthy. We're getting less fiber, and we're drinking less of the hydrating fluids like water. Now, as we age, and again, this is still early in life, our gut stops working as efficiently. So what I mean by that is it's not efficiently at moving waste products along the colon for removal. So you are more likely to become constipated, and that's quite unpleasant. Now, what you do to compensate or prevent that from happening is, firstly, you need to focus on fluid intake. It's one of the most important considerations. So every time you go to have a meal or a snack, have some water, have a glass of water. Because if you have a glass of water, you're going to be ensuring that you're hydrated. If you don't like water, have some herbal tea, something that's going to be not caffeinated, again, to boost your hydration levels. But fiber is just as important. So with every meal, you should be having some whole grain bread or some brown rice or some fruit and vegetables, because they're packed full of fiber, and that fiber will help move everything along the digestive tract and out for waste removal. That's two of the most important considerations that we fail to neglect, particularly as we age. But then most importantly, the one we can't neglect is exercise, because exercise moves everything along the gut. If you're exercising every day, you're very unlikely to be suffering from constipation. So they're the three factors you need to really work on, particularly over the age of 40, and that's water, fiber with every meal, and exercise every day.
And that's a lot to ask for some people, but you trade off in quality of life in so many ways without those things. 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week is what we're now recommending by the AMA. So when you think about that, that's taking a walk every day. That's not talking about a sweat fest in the gym. That's just getting your body moving. So yeah, I think it's hard to deny the importance of some exercise. And, back to your point on resistance training, that can be as simple as picking up a heavy can of soup and doing some soup curls at home, right? I mean, simple things like that. Do they make a difference?
They do. These are such great points you're making. I mean, resistance training doesn't have to be going to the gym and lifting heavy iron. Do it in the comfort of your own home. Watch a 30-minute YouTube tutorial. And, body weight resistance training is just as effective as lifting weights. So you need to do it a couple of times a week. And like you mentioned, you need to be doing just 150 minutes a week. When you break that down, it's only about 30 minutes a day. Yeah. So most of the days can be walking or walk, run, or whatever it might be, bike, swim. And then a couple of those days should be body weight circuits in the comfort of your own home if you don't like going to the gym.
Well, great advice for all of us who were staring down the barrel of that, losing our hair and feeling older every day. I think we need to fight back, because a lot of us could have a lot of years left ahead. Dr. Nick, I appreciate you being here. Do you want to leave us with anything specific?
Look, Lee, it's always great to talk to you. Thank you very much for having me on the show again.
Very welcome. I'd love to have you back again. That is Dr. Nick Fuller. He is an obesity specialist at the University of Sydney in Australia and also the host of the 9 Minutes to Better Health podcast. You'll find it on all the major services, and I hope you do. Nick, good to see you again.
You too. Thanks, Lee.